And Skull, we're back for another episode of Vikings Uncovered. I am RabbitDad. I am your host, and I am here to talk about all the things purple and gold. Starting with last week recap, we'll move into the rest as we go along. Stay tuned. Here we go. And like I said, I am the RabbitDad. I am your host for Vikings Uncovered. You can find me on Twitter or X at FFRabbitDad. Here we go. Let's start off with the recap. Vikings are 2-0. 2-0. Better than anybody projected, at least all those pundits who said, we're garbage. They're going to be at the bottom of the league this year. Early draft pick. No. Doesn't look like it's happening like that. I'm super optimistic, obviously. 2-0. Just beat the Niners 23-17. Never trailed in the game. Made Brock Purdy look like a nervous wreck. Just the defense was together, making plays all over the place, just dominating the ball, dominating both sides of the ball. It was wonderful to see. And a big part of that, that's the Vikings faithful at the stadium. Like, that crowd is intense. Every time I've seen it, every time I've been to it, it's one of the greatest fandoms in the NFL, if not all of sports, for sure. It gets so loud and obnoxious in there. It's going to be a huge point of the Vikings being able to win at home is all the support they get from the fans. Another thing that gives them an advantage, and showed again in this last week, was their positional depth, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which we'll get into a little bit in a moment. But just the fact that it's 2-0. I'm sorry, I'm a little gushing a little bit. Let me tone it down, but let's get it. Let's just get into it. 2-0. Texans coming to town this weekend. But for now, let's dive into some of the hot points on the defense side from the last game. Brian Flores, defensive coordinator of the Vikings, is a mastermind. And if it wasn't for a certain legal matter, would probably still be a head coach in the NFL at the moment. But he's not. He's our defensive coordinator, and he's doing wonderful things. The squad's come together wonderfully so far, quicker than anticipated, I think a lot of people will say. Going back to that last game, we talk about Purdy not having time in the pocket, not having the opportunity to make things happen because he was constantly under pressure. He got sacked 5 times. There was 6 additional tackles for losses by the defense. Batted down 6 passes, including a couple at the line of scrimmage, I believe. It was just the defense couldn't have played a whole lot better, honestly. Aside from sure, Mason had over 100 yards rushing again, and Kittle had a nice day, but the defense is the driving force. It's going to be the thing that keeps the Vikings in games and gets them winning week after week after week. The offense is good. Defense, as long as it keeps doing what it's doing, when guys like Metellus show up with the 7 tackles and that tip pick, just the one that we got bounced around between him and a couple other guys, and he finally hauled it in, the interception. The Blake Cashman had another 13 tackles and a sack, a couple of PEs, passes defended. Pat Jones, where did this guy come from? Another 2 sacks. Before this year, he had 5 career sacks. He's got 4 in 2 games. Loving it. Van Ginkel, one of my personal favorites when we got him onto the squad, and it's been since. So I had to use him in the thumbnail for this episode. Oh, he's such a beast on the field. He's everywhere, just like Cashman is, just everywhere, whenever he needs to be, making plays, batting down passes, getting sacks, getting tackles. Grenard came in and had a good performance this last week. Ivan Pace had another 9 tackles. Stephon Gilmore doing his thing, shutting down guys on the outside as the defensive back. There's so many pieces of this puzzle that we didn't know how they were going to fit before the season started, and they're all seamlessly flowing together and creating a wonderful picture of this defense led by Brian Flores. It's going to be a super fun thing to watch. I'm excited every time the Vikings are on defense during the game, just because anybody can make the play, because we got all these different guys that do stuff. On the downside, though, we do have a couple of injuries to report on the defensive side of the ball. Dallas Turner tweaked his knee last week late in the game. He's not going to be playing this weekend. He was our rookie first-round pick, for those of you who might not remember. Pace, another one of my favorite guys, he's going to be out as well, unfortunately. He had a quad ankle injury that popped up from the last game during the week. So two important players on the defensive side of the ball. But like I said before, the Vikings have depth on the defense. They're going to be able to adapt. It might be a little wonky at times. Maybe there's a little flow we're going to be in there. I think it's going to be good still, and it's going to still lead to a really, really good and I believe close game. Let's jump over to the offensive side of the Vikings squad now. Kevin O'Connell, I watched a couple of his press conferences this week, and I mean, he's saying all the right things. I'm not one for coach speak, really. I think it's a whole lot of like, well, if I say this, it doesn't mean I'm saying this, and if I say that, it means I didn't say that. Like, I don't know. I like listening to coach speak as much as I like watching a presidential debate, which is almost none, but still get some information from it. Another key to the win against the Niners this last weekend was that he emphasized doing the physical practices all week. So getting ready to take the hits. 49ers were on a short week. They had played one day later than everybody else. As the Monday night game, so they had one less day to prepare. They were one more day tired. So the physical practices, getting the Vikings up to speed, making them ready to make hits and take hits all day long, gave them that little bit of a physical edge, which is probably also another significant reason why they pulled out that win on Sunday. Let's move down to the offensive line. All five guys played all 100% of the plays. They allowed 3 sacks this week as opposed to 1 last week, which is still good. I mean, 3 sacks, that's fine. But they all look good. They're all fully healthy coming into the next game. So we're going to see that unit keep doing what they're doing. Protecting Darnold in the pocket, opening holes up for Aaron Jones, and Ty Chandler doing what they need to do. Sam Bradford, quarterback, Vikings. Another 200-yard game, 268 yards, 2 touchdowns. I believe it was, the one pick by Wagner. Like I said, he was the guy I was worried about last week, but he had that one pick. But he also ran for 32 yards on 5 carries, which some people are like, oh, wow, how could that guy move so good? Well, he's actually more maneuverable, more mobile than people give him credit for. He actually now has 13 career rushing touchdowns in 5 or 6 seasons, including in 2021. He had, I think, 5 in the course of 3 or 4 weeks. It was crazy. But yeah, he can move around on his feet. He's not going to be a pocket guy all the time like Kirk Cousins. He can do that, and it's his strongest point of his game is having time in the pocket, waiting for the play to open up and making a pass. But as we saw, 5 carries, 32 yards, making plays, getting first downs, getting whatever he needs to do to keep the team moving downfield. He's making some really smart decisions. He's made a couple of weird ones, a couple of bad ones, but he's doing good. I'm still super optimistic about the outcome. I'm still saying 4,000 yards is in the cards. All right, running backs. Let's move down to the running backs. Aaron Jones missed a little time in the game, came out for a little bit. Only had 32 yards on 9 carries, 36 yards on 5 receptions, which was nice. And he did that fumble, which was almost costly, almost really bad. But he did his job, and more importantly, behind him, Ty Chandler came in. He took 10 carries for 82 yards. So if this is how it's going to be every week, where one of them explodes and the other one has a lesser explosive day, trying to be nice about it. One of them doesn't excel and the other one does every single week. If it's one or the other, it doesn't matter to me. But the running game is working. It's working better than it has the last few years with Madison, with Cook, anybody else we had back there. But Aaron Jones, this is 32 yards rushing on 9 carries, probably is going to be his low point for the season. I would expect and hope. Ty Chandler at 8.2 a carry, that's nice. It shows his burst, it shows his acceleration. 2 high points in his game. What we need to keep seeing from him is when he gets opportunities, he makes the most of them. And if he can do that and they could keep each other off the field here and there, spell each other, give them each other rest, it's going to be a lot better for both of them in the long run. Wide receivers, Justin Jefferson. Let's talk about that play. That beautifully thrown ball, just lobs it up there. Darnold lobs it up there, the perfect touch, the perfect spot for Jefferson to grab it behind the defender and run downfield. And my favorite part of the play was not Justin Jefferson, was not Sam Darnold. It was Jalen Naylor making that block, running all the way down the field, catching up and making that block right before the goal line. Which without that block, Jefferson probably would not have scored the touchdown on that play. Yeah, they might have scored another play or two later, but a 97-yard reception, great pass, great route, great running, avoiding the tacklers, and then that key block at the end by Jalen Naylor might be my favorite play of the year so far. Jalen Naylor himself had a nice day. Caught 3 catches, 3 of 4 targets, 57 yards, and another touchdown. So that's 2 on the season for him. Brandon Powell, like I said, we got a little involved. He had a couple catches. I think he caught 2. Yeah, he caught 2 of his 2 targets for 16 yards. So nothing fancy, nothing splashy. But he's in there. He's running around, making catches when he's throwing the ball. He's going to have to do that again this week, as we still don't have Jordan Addison. He'll be out at least one more game, still working with that ankle injury. It's unfortunate. But when he comes back 100%, that trio of wide receivers, I'm not going to say 3 deep vibes yet, but, Jefferson, Addison, maybe the best tandem of wide receivers in the NFL. And you bring in Naylor, who is already, he hasn't had a lot of looks, but he's made the most out of all of his looks. He's averaging 54 yards week 2, 21 yards week 1, so 75 yards off of 4 catches. So you do the math, that's close to 20 yards catch. Just saying, it's up there. Obviously, that's not quite sustainable, but at the same time, it shows that he can make the plays happen when he gets the ball, and the Vikings and Sam Darnold are willing to throw him the ball, whether Addison's on the field or not. So it's looking good. Let's move into the tight ends. I wanted to talk about them a little bit. The snap counts changed a bit. Munt took over the snap counts again, but he did it by a bigger margin. He was in for 70% of the snaps. Josh Oliver was in there for 54%, but Oliver didn't have any catches. Munt had 2 catches on 3 targets, just 12 yards. So the tight ends are in there primarily for blocking, obviously, but we do know that they can catch if we need to. If we need to change things up and be like, they're not throwing to the tight end all day, let's just leave them alone. And then you get Oliver or Munt breaks off for a route and then turns it into like a 15-yard gain, like on the sideline or up the middle or whatever needs to happen. One more injury I want to touch on is Nick Muse, the 3rd tight end, primarily blocking tight end for the Vikings. He was put on IR this week, so he'll be out for at least 4 games. And that actually opened up the door for Myles Gaskin might be utilized a little bit more as running, maybe going out on routes out wide for once in a while. Maybe he's doing some blocking. He's an efficient run blocker out of the backfield. So that's where that is. So we still got Munt. We still got Oliver splitting time at tight end. Special teams, Will Reichard is still perfect for his career. He was 2 for 2 PATs, made all 3 of his field goals, along with 39, which we should not expect anything super long from him. He did not have the strongest leg coming out, which is why he was mainly why he was undrafted. He came from Alabama. He was super accurate there, but yeah, his max field goal distance probably 54, maybe 55 yards at best. We get a couple more yards out of him if they're outside and the wind's behind him and the downhill slope or something. But guy's got an accurate boot. He just isn't going to be a 60-yard field goal kicker. It's never going to happen. Ryan Wright had a better game at punting. Only had 3 punts, averaged 50 and a third yard per punt, so it was a nice day for him. And special teams, further special teams, I mean, obviously there's not a lot of the punt and the kick returning stuff happening. It's going to, I mean, there'll be plays here and there. Most of the kickoffs are still going into the end zones. It's boring, but, you know, that's the way the NFL is working right now until somebody figures out how they want to do this differently. And then the special team play, that block punt by C.J. Ham. Can we talk about that for a moment? That was just sitting on the couch watching that play, and I just think in my head right before the play starts, like, what if I want him to block this punt. Not kidding. And sitting on here next to my wife, and we see it happen. I see him break through. I'm like, yes. Broke that seam, just perfect hole, perfect timing. Even did the perfect block the punt and spin while you're doing it, so you don't get called for the roughing the kicker penalty, which is always a possibility on the punters because they can act like the soccer players do. But that was awesome. Obviously led more points for the Vikings, and it was so much fun. It was a great win on Sunday. See if we can do one more. So let's get into the upcoming game against the Houston Texans, the 2-0 Houston Texans, just like the 2-0 Minnesota Vikings. So last week, Texans played Chicago. They won 19-13. So Chicago, their defense is legit. They've held teams to lower scores. Texans are also a legit defense. They've got a couple of guys like Derek Stingley in the secondary, could be trouble for whoever he covers, whether it's Jefferson, Naylor, anybody. Other defensive players to watch out for, obviously, Danielle Hunter makes his triumphant return to to Minnesota as a member of the Texans. And we'll have Stephon Diggs making his first trip to Minnesota since being traded away many years ago to the Bills. So it'll be interesting. I've seen it pop up a lot on social media in the last few days. People are like, you're going to cheer for Diggs? You're going to boo Diggs? I'm not going to boo Diggs. No reason to. 2 reasons. One, it's not nice. It's not nice. He was a little salty at the end of his time here. Yeah, that happens. Sometimes players want to see greener grasses and try something else and go for a championship and get paid money. You know, that's part of the NFL. You work your butt off, you do stuff, you earn a contract, you earn more money. And yeah, he wasn't going to get paid here. So he went to Buffalo, did some good things. Now he's coming back. I will absolutely cheer him. The other reason is the Minneapolis Miracle. It's possibly the greatest moment in Vikings history that he was part of. I watched that the replay of that like 25 times this week, and every single time I watch it still gives me chills. Keenum drops back, throws out the Diggs, and then the burst stitch. Oh, he's loose. Up the sideline. Oh, okay. I need to stop. Reel it back in. We're talking about the Texans. All right. So last week, the Texans. C.J. Stroud, 260 yards and a touchdown. He's going to do Stroud things. He's going to be efficient. He's going to hit his receivers. He's probably not going to be they're not going to win the game based on what Stroud does. They could lose the game based on what Stroud does. But if he has another solid outing like he did this last week, you know, if he's got 240 to 280 yards and a score or two, Vikings can't let that happen. They want to try and slow that down. If they can get pressure on him and disturb the pocket, do like they did to Purdy, do like they did to Daniel Jones, keep him moving, keep him from waiting, it could be a huge key to the victory should the Vikings win, which I think they They will. Running backs for the Texans, there's been some shakeup, obviously. We know Mixon's not playing. We know Pierce is not playing. So another Viking returning. Cam Akers looks like he's going to get the nod to start for the Texans at running back and sprinkle in some Dare Ogunbowale. Yes, that's a real name if you haven't heard it before. He's their pass-catching specialist running back. He's probably only going to do that. I could see him getting 3, 4, 5, 6 receptions, But, yeah, Akers is going to be the main guy out of their backfield. He looked good in the preseason. He really hasn't done much yet this season. But, again, he's like the third guy on the chart. And since the first two guys are both out, it'll be interesting. So if the Vikings just keep him locked down and the Texans can't move the ball on the ground, they're going to have a real hard time moving the ball efficiently through the air if they're just trying to rely on that solely, because then you can just leave an extra guy in the back, play some extra zone coverage, and not give Stroud the opportunity to find a seam to make the time to, or for the receivers to make the time and get open. So Diggs is obviously one of the receivers for them. He had 4 catches for 37 yards last week. Not super efficient, not super big numbers. Nico Collins, on the other hand, who's their number one guy catching the ball, 135 yards on 8 catches and a touchdown. I've been on this dude for 2.5 years. He is legit. He could be like a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL if this trajectory he's on keeps going. Tank Dell, he'll get his targets. He's also a threat out of the backfield, probably gets a few carries because of the fact that they're missing 2 of their top running backs. The defense last week against the Bears had 7 sacks and 2 interceptions. They had a couple of guys on the defense that are potential problems for the Vikings on the offense. To'o, I believe is he pronounced his name, linebacker for the Texans. He had 13 tackles last week and 9 solo tackles. He's a force. He's going to be all over the place, and he could disrupt things for the Vikings. Jalen Petre, I believe, he's a defensive back. He's going to be doing coverage alongside Derek Stingley. They could be a good tandem. They could make some problems, but that's on the outside. You come inside, hit tight ends, hit who's ever coming out of the slot. Running back passes to the running back. Yeah, that's this kind of stuff that the Vikings are going to need to also focus on. So check down the short yardage stuff if things on the outside are getting wonky. So after all that, let's go into my betting prop predictions for the game. As of last night, when I checked it, the Texans are favored by 1.5. I'm going to take the Vikings and the points on that one. So give me the plus 1.5 for the Vikings. It's close because it could be like a 1 or 2 point game in my opinion. Over/under is 46. I'm taking the over just by a touch. If I had to bet on it, I probably personally wouldn't bet on it because I like to have that hook in there, that extra half point higher or lower. My official prediction for the game is I think the Vikings will come out on top. Like I said, could be 1 or 2 point game. Could come down to somebody makes the last second field goal. Somebody scores the last second touchdown, puts them up ahead. I think, 24-23 is definitely win the cards. 24-21, 22. The low 20s, mid to low 20s for both teams. So, yeah, probably on the higher end. So 26-24 doesn't really make a lot of sense, but somewhere around there. Anytime for you fun gamblers who love your anytime touchdown props, I'm putting one on Aaron Jones for certain. Vikings are going to have to focus on the run because the defense of the Texans, I feel, is a little bit stronger against the pass. When you got the 2 guys on the outside covering the receivers and you got the bookend defensive ends or rushers in Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson, I think it's going to come to a lot of checkdowns. They're going to have moments where there's not a lot of time in the pocket. Sam Darnold's going to need to get rid of that ball. So hit the tight ends, hit the running backs, short passes, 5, 6, 7, 8 yards at a time. And I think Aaron Jones turns one of his opportunities into a touchdown tomorrow. Now, let me touch a little bit on my fantasy picks for the week, because I am a fantasy football guy. I didn't go into that enough in the last episode. Apologize, but here we go. Obviously, you're starting Aaron Jones, you're starting Justin Jefferson, you're starting C.J. Stroud, you're starting Nico Collins. Those are all absolutes. If you need a little help outside of that, you can go with guys. Jalen Naylor, I think, is going to get enough touches. Chandler could get enough touches. The kicker on either team, you could go with it. Like I could see each team scoring 2 field goals and a couple touchdowns. So, you're looking at least 8 points from a kicker there, which is decent for fantasy. It's a good line to have. The defenses, the potential for either of these defenses to just accidentally go off and drop a 35 burger on another team is a possibility. So I'm not high on either defense, but at the same time, you could definitely have worse options. Diggs is a possibility. I mean, Diggs can see some targets, and if he makes one big play, he's probably going to start mouthing off a little bit. He's a talker, but he's also a player. So Tank Dell could break one open. If you really needed help at running back, and obviously there's some places where you do, like me in particular, one of my teams is absolutely devastated at running back this week, or in general. Akers could be a fly just based on usage, the number of times he's going to get the ball. You could make the same argument for Agumbawale, who in a PPR situation would be a little more valuable. Because like I said, I could see him getting 5, 6 receptions against the Vikings. So those are my fantasy picks, my thoughts on the fantasy for this coming week from this game. So with all that said, Vikings keep the defense rolling. They don't give Stroud time to react, time to let a play open up, and they'll keep him on his toes, keep him off his heels. Then they can definitely pull another win out, which I think they will. And I think Aaron Jones is going to be one of the biggest parts of it because, like I said, catching the ball, running the ball, got to get rid of the ball quick because there's going to be times where Darnold is pressured. There's going to be times where Darnold is sacked. It's going to happen because this is a defense that a defense they haven't quite seen yet, where you got the problems on the line and on the secondary that could both do significant harm to the Vikings prospects. But again, Vikings are going to win tomorrow. And I thank you for coming in with me, hanging out with the RabbitDad, the ears. Shout out to the Longwell jersey, the favorite number 8 in this household. And again, you find me on Twitter or X at FFRabbitDad. I'm there constantly. I try to be helpful on the fantasy community and in the Vikings community. So again, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Skol, baby.